Welcome to the phases of the software development lifecycle. After watching this video, you will be able to name the phases involved in the SDLC, describe each phase, and identify several tasks associated with each phase. There are generally 6 phases in the SDLC process: planning, design, development, testing, deployment, and maintenance. Each phase is discrete, meaning that tasks from a previous phase do not overlap with tasks in the next phase. The original SDLC was conceived as a traditional waterfall method, where the phases are linear, but have since been adapted to introduce iteration so that shifting requirements can be accommodated. Waterfall and other approaches to software development will be discussed in another video. Note that some organizations may have different names for each stage. For example, planning may be called requirements or strategy or analysis. Also, some organizations may have additional or fewer stages. In the first stage of the SDLC, the planning phase, requirements are gathered, analyzed, documented, and prioritized. When planning a software solution, the following factors must be considered: users of the solution, the overall purpose of the solution, data inputs and outputs, legal and regulatory compliance, risk identification, quality assurance requirements, allocation of human and financial resources, and project scheduling. As part of the planning process, labor and material costs are estimated and weighed against time constraints. Also, project teams are identified and roles of each team member are proposed. If stakeholders are struggling to define requirements, often the development team may produce prototypes during the planning stage to tease out those requirements. A prototype is a small-scale replica of the end product used to get stakeholder feedback and establish requirements. A prototype is used to test basic design ideas. Though prototyping usually occurs during the planning stage, prototyping can occur at various phases of the SDLC whenever requirements need to be reconsidered or clarified as the project develops. After requirements have been gathered, they are combined into a document called a Software Requirements Specification, or SRS document. The SRS needs to be clearly understood and approved by all stakeholders. The developers are also involved at this stage so they can gain a clear understanding of these requirements. Requirements and the SRS will be discussed in more detail in a later video. In the design phase, the requirements gathered from the SRS are used to develop the software architecture. Several team members work together at this stage to design the architecture. The architecture is reviewed by the stakeholders and team, and during this phase, prototypes can be designed. A prototype is a preliminary mock-up of the system or parts of the system used for demonstration purposes. The document created in this phase is called a design document and is used by developers during the next phase, which is the development phase. The development phase, sometimes called the building phase or the implementation phase, is when the developers start the coding process once the design document is completed. The project planners use the design document to determine and assign coding tasks. This phase often requires the use of programming tools, different programming languages, and software stacks. Organizations may also have standards or guidelines that need to be followed. The testing phase is next in the process once the coding is complete, and some large projects have dedicated testing teams. Code needs to be thoroughly tested to ensure it is stable, secure, and meets the requirements outlined in the SRS. Testing can be manual, automated, or a hybrid of both. Product bugs are reported, tracked, and fixed, and the code is retested until the software is stable. Some common levels of testing include unit testing, integration testing, system testing, and acceptance testing. Each of these testing levels will be described in further detail in another video. Next, the deployment phase is where the application is released into the production environment and made available to users. This can also happen in stages. First, it is released onto a user acceptance testing, also called UAT, platform, and once the customer signs off on the functionality, it is released to production. This approach can be used for making software available on a website, mobile device app store, or a software distribution server on a corporate network. Finally, the maintenance phase happens once the code has been deployed into a production environment. This phase helps to find any other bugs, identify user interface issues, or UI for short, and identify other requirements that may not have been listed in the SRS. Code enhancements can also be identified at this stage. If bugs are discovered in this phase that were missed during testing, these errors may need to be fixed for high-priority issues or incorporated into the requirements as part of a future software release, and the process can start over again. In this video, you learned that the SDLC can be divided into 6 phases. Planning involves requirement gathering and development of the SRS. The architecture is developed during the design phase, and the design document is created. The development phase is when coding takes place, and then during the testing phase, issues with the code are found and fixed if possible. Deployment is when the code is released to the production environment, and finally, in the maintenance stage, feedback is collected from stakeholders, other UI issues may be identified, and code enhancements suggested. And this information can be fed into another software development cycle if necessary.